They didn't put me on Autopay to help me. They put me on Autopay to replace me. I'm saying that now from the quiet side of the storm, where the air still feels heavy with Florida humidity, but my lungs finally feel like they belong to me again. The ceiling fan turns above my kitchen table, slow and steady, and for the first time in months, the sound isn't competing with whispers behind closed doors. My home is mine again, not a stage for someone else's performance. For a long time, I told myself I was being dramatic, that families get messy, that love can be clumsy, that a daughter-in-law trying to help is something you accept with grace. But I learned the difference between help and control. Help asks, control assumes. Help leaves you stronger. Control leaves you smaller. And control rarely arrives kicking the door in. It arrives with a smile and an app login. It arrives with "I'll handle it." It arrives with the kind of confidence that makes you feel rude for questioning it. My name is Margaret Ellison. I'm 69 years old, and I've lived in Florida long enough to know that the most dangerous weather doesn't always look like a disaster at first. Sometimes it looks like a bright morning with a few clouds, and then suddenly you're boarding windows and realizing you waited too long. Frank, my husband, used to say our life was built on small promises kept. Pay the bill early, fix what breaks, speak kindly when you're tired. We were never rich, but we were disciplined, and discipline kept our home warm. Frank died 9 years ago. The house was paid off, the retirement was modest but stable, and I told myself I would keep living the way we did. Quietly, responsibly, without asking anyone to carry me. I didn't expect my own family to try. My son Michael is 44. He looks like his father in the shoulders and the way he stands when he's trying to be brave. But he has my eyes soft when he lets them be. Michael has always been gentle. As a boy, he was the kind who apologized if he bumped into a chair. As a man, he avoids conflict like it's contagious. And I didn't understand until too late that avoidance is a gift to the right kind of person. The right kind of person, in my case, was my daughter-in-law. Lauren is 40. Beautiful, polished, quick. Her hair is straight and dark and always perfect, and she wears perfume that smells expensive and sharp, like something that doesn't fade even when you want it to. She speaks with a sweetness that makes you question your own ears, and she calls you honey, the same way some people slide a hand into your pocket softly like you won't notice. When Michael married her, I tried. I truly did. I told myself that a mother who loves her child makes room for the person he chooses. I smiled at Lauren's little comments. I ignored the way she corrected me in my own kitchen. I pretended I didn't hear the way she spoke to Michael sometimes, like she was training him. The first time I felt the air change was years ago, long before she moved in. We were at a family dinner. I'd made fish, seasoned the way Frank liked it. Lauren took one bite, smiled too brightly, and said, "That's a lot of salt for Michael." Michael chuckled, uncomfortable, and said, "Mom, you know Lauren's sensitive." Sensitive, as if my cooking was an attack, and her preferences were a medical condition. I let it go. I let so many things go. After Frank died, the house got quieter than I expected. Not just quiet in sound, quiet like a physical thing, sitting in corners, filling the hallway, lingering in the empty side of the bed. Grief does that. It turns your home into an echo chamber for what you've lost. So when Michael called me 2 years ago and said, "Mom, we might need to stay with you for a bit," my first emotion wasn't suspicion, it was relief. He told me Lauren had lost her job. His hours had been cut. Their rent was behind. Their credit was complicated. Their daughter Ava needed stability. He said it would be temporary, just until they got back on their feet. "Of course," I said. "Come home." They arrived with too many boxes and too much confidence for people who said it was temporary. The moving truck turned my driveway into a loading dock. Lauren walked through my living room like she was reviewing a property. She tapped a wall with her nail and said, "This place has good bones." Michael hugged me long and tight, and my heart softened against my better judgment. Ava ran down the hallway, squealing at old family photos, and for a moment I believed I'd made the right choice. It didn't take long for Lauren to start rearranging my life. First, it was the harmless kind of organizing. She moved my spices into matching jars. She rearranged my pantry. She replaced my key hook, an old brass hook Frank installed by the door, with a sleek ceramic bowl so it looks nicer. I remember the first time I reached for my spare key and couldn't find it. My fingers went to the empty space where the hook used to be, and I felt a flicker of annoyance. "It's in the bowl," Lauren called from the kitchen, like I'd misplaced it myself. The bowl sat on the entry table, glossy and deep, and my keys were buried under theirs like mine were an afterthought. I told myself it was just decor. Don't be dramatic. That's what women like me were trained to say to ourselves. The next thing was my mug. It's a chipped ceramic mug with a faded blue stripe. Frank used to tease me for keeping it. I loved it because it fit my hand the way some things fit your life without needing a reason. The first time Lauren saw it, she held it between two fingers and said, "Oh, vintage," with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I laughed politely, because that's what you do when someone insults you quietly and you don't want to make a scene. I didn't realize the mug was going to become a symbol, like the key, like so many small things. Lauren's real power play began with the bills. One evening, she sat at my kitchen table with her laptop open and my mail spread out like she owned it. She spoke in a tone that sounded helpful, practical, modern. "Margaret, you shouldn't have to worry about this stuff," she said. "We can put everything on Autopay. It's safer, it's easier, it'll protect you." Protect. That word again. Michael hovered behind her like he always did when Lauren took the lead. His face looked relieved, like responsibility was something you could hand to someone else and feel virtuous about it. "Mom," he said, "Lauren's good with all that. It'll just simplify things. Money is intimate. It's not just numbers. It's independence. It's proof you've been living your own life." I hesitated, and Lauren's eyes softened in a way that made me feel silly for hesitating. "We're family," she said. "Let us help." So I let her. I gave her login information. I handed over statements. I watched her type my passwords into her phone like it was nothing. At first, everything looked fine. That's how control works. It doesn't break the door down. It turns the lock so slowly you don't hear it. Then, the corrections started. Lauren corrected how I loaded the dishwasher, how I folded towels, how loud I spoke on the phone. She corrected the way I bought groceries. I bought peaches one afternoon, soft, yellow, smelling like summer, and I felt a small, foolish happiness, because some joys are simple and that's enough. Lauren glanced at the receipt and raised her eyebrows. "Peaches are expensive," she said. She tapped a thick envelope on the counter. I stared at it, confused. "What's that?" She smiled as if explaining to a child. "Your weekly cash. It helps you stay on track." My face went hot. I stood there with peach juice on my fingers, feeling like I'd been caught stealing from myself. When I objected softly, she tilted her head. "It's not a punishment," she said. "It's structure." Michael nodded along like structure was holy. The first betrayal incident came disguised as safety. One afternoon, I tried to order new reading glasses online. My card declined. I stared at the screen, embarrassed in a way that felt irrational but deep. A declined card feels like an announcement, even when no one is watching. I called the bank. A young man answered, polite and efficient. I could hear the click of keys. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "It appears your daily spending limit has been lowered." My stomach tightened. Lowered by who? There was a pause, just long enough to make my throat go dry. "It was changed by an authorized user," he said. Authorized user. I ended the call and sat very still, listening to the air conditioner hum. That hum used to feel like comfort. That day it sounded like a warning. I confronted Michael gently, because I was still trying to keep peace without becoming invisible. "Why is my card limited?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck the way he did when he was a boy, and he'd broken something. "Lauren thought it would be safer," he said, and then he added, "You've been tired lately." Tired, or inconvenient. I swallowed my anger because I could feel it rising like heat off pavement, and I didn't want Lauren to label me emotional. The second betrayal was public and designed to shrink me. After Sunday service, Lauren stood with a group of women near the coffee table. She laughed and said, "We're keeping Margaret on a budget. She's like a teenager with Amazon." The women laughed politely, uncertain. I felt my cheeks burn. Denise Rowe's eyes flicked to me, apologetic. Carla Jensen looked ashamed. Michael smiled too soft, appeasing, like he was trying to keep the peace by sacrificing me. Something inside me went still. The third betrayal happened quietly, the way real theft does. Frank's wedding ring was in a velvet pouch in my dresser drawer. I didn't wear it. I kept it because it was the weight of him. The last circle that touched his finger. A small piece of my past that still felt warm. One evening, I opened the drawer, and the pouch was gone. I stood there with my fingers hovering over empty space, heart knocking against my ribs. The drawer smelled faintly of Lauren's perfume, sharp and floral, and it hit me like proof. I asked Michael if he'd seen it. No, he said too fast. Lauren appeared in the doorway like she'd been summoned. Oh, that, she said. We put it somewhere safe. Where? I asked. She tilted her head like I was being difficult. Margaret, you don't need to worry about every little thing. Stress isn't good for you. She used health like a leash. I searched quietly because I didn't want to be called paranoid. I opened drawers, checked closets, looked under the bed like a woman searching for her own heartbeat. 2 days later, I found the velvet pouch tucked inside Lauren's finance binder, behind tabbed folders labeled utilities, medical, household. It wasn't carelessly hidden, it was filed like an asset. I sat on the edge of my bed with that pouch in my hand and felt grief rise, hot and raw, not just for Frank, but for the version of my life where my home was safe. That's when I stopped thinking this was about organization. This was about ownership. And the breaking point arrived on a Tuesday, in the middle of something small. I was cooking tomato basil soup because a storm was coming, and I wanted comfort. The smell filled my kitchen like a memory. For a few minutes, I felt like myself again. Lauren walked in, wrinkled her nose, and said, "You used too much olive oil. That's not in the budget." Then she reached past me and turned the stove down. Something in me snapped into place, not rage but clarity. I slapped her hand away, not hard, firm. Her eyes widened, and for a split second her mask slipped. I saw something sharp underneath. Michael rushed in like he'd been summoned by the sound of rebellion. Lauren turned to him and said, "Sweet as sugar, your mom is getting aggressive." Aggressive, because I protected my own stove. Michael looked at me like I was the problem. "Mom," he said, "please, don't make this harder." That was the moment I saw it clearly. He was choosing peace with her over respect for me. Not because he hated me, because he was weak where she was strong, and she knew it. I turned off the stove. I wiped my hands on a towel. My voice came out quiet and steady. "This is my house," I said, "and you will not touch my food, my money, or my memories again." Lauren laughed once, small and dismissive. "Margaret," she said, "you don't even know what's in your own name anymore." The room went cold. My body stayed still, but my mind snapped to attention like a door slamming. Because that sentence wasn't just an insult, it was a hint. That night, I didn't make coffee for anyone but myself. It sounds petty, but in a house where I'd been trained to perform gratitude, it was a revolution. I poured my coffee into my chipped mug, the one Lauren mocked, and I held it like a promise. I am still here. When Michael walked into the kitchen and opened his mouth to speak, I raised my hand. "Not today," I said calmly. His eyes widened. For the first time in months, he looked unsure. I took a yellow legal pad from a drawer and set it on my table. Then I took Lauren's glossy finance binder and set it beside my pad. One was hers, controlling, polished, filled with charts that weren't her right to make. The other was mine, plain, worn, ready for facts she couldn't charm away. Then I called Diane Mercer, my neighbor, a retired paralegal with a spine like steel and a voice like common sense. She answered on the second ring. "Margaret," she said, "you sound like you've reached the end of your patience." "I have," I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. Diane didn't ask for gossip. She asked for details. When I told her about the spending limit, the envelope, the church joke, the ring pouch, she went quiet for a second and then said, "Start with documents, bank statements, insurance, emails, texts, anything that shows changes, and write down dates and times. They count on your shame. Don't give it to them." I stared at the key bowl by the door, at my keys buried under theirs, and realized shame had been Lauren's favorite leash. Over the next week, my life became a quiet investigation. I requested bank records and printed them, circling the spending limit change and the authorized user note. I searched my email and found confirmations that Autopay settings had been updated, notifications I hadn't recognized because Lauren's address was listed as the contact. I printed those and highlighted her name until the marker squeaked. I found an insurance update notification that read, in plain words, policy update requested by Lauren Ellison. I printed it and filed it in my own folder, not her binder. Mine. I took photos of the objects that told the story. The chipped mug, the key bowl, the velvet pouch, the envelope. Not because a court cares about symbolism, but because gaslighting thrives when you can't point to anything concrete. Symbols remind you what you lived. And I asked for witnesses. I spoke to Carla and Denise from church. I asked them to write down exactly what Lauren said about my budget, and when she said it, Carla looked ashamed. I didn't laugh, she whispered. I didn't know what to do. Write what you know, I told her. That's doing something. Denise didn't hesitate. I'll write it, she said, and if she tries to spin it, I'll say it out loud. Then the call came that confirmed what my gut already knew. A woman named Lila from a local office called and said she was following up on a request to update primary contact and resident status information associated with this property. I gripped my chipped mug so hard I felt the crack beneath my thumb. I didn't authorize anything, I said. There was a pause, and Lila's tone shifted into careful professionalism. Thank you, she said. We received documentation from Lauren Ellison requesting changes. Some items appear incomplete. Incomplete because my signature wasn't there, because my consent wasn't there, because Lauren's confidence had outrun legality. Email me everything, I said, and my voice stayed calm even as my stomach twisted. That night I didn't sleep much. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind kept sorting pieces into place like a puzzle, finally showing its picture. At dawn, I printed the attachments Leela emailed. The paper felt warm from the printer like fresh evidence. One PDF made my breath stop. It listed my name under Remove. It listed Michael and Lauren under ADD. And under Reason, it said, Resident no longer able to manage independent living. My stomach clenched like I'd swallowed ice. I called Diane. She drove over with her hair still damp and her jaw set. She read it twice and said, This isn't caregiving. This is displacement. Then she pointed to the line where Lauren had typed her name and labeled herself Authorized Family Representative. Diane looked up. Did you authorize that? No, I said. I would remember signing away my adulthood. I could have confronted them privately in my kitchen, but I wasn't interested in a private argument they could twist. Truth needs daylight. Justice needs witnesses, so I chose the church community room after Sunday service, a place Lauren couldn't dismiss as me being emotional, a place where people had already seen enough to understand the stakes. I asked Pastor Glenn for the room. He looked at my face and didn't ask questions. I'll open it for you, he said quietly. I invited Michael and Lauren in writing, short, polite, firm. I invited Diane. I invited Carla and Denise. And I asked Lila for a written statement. She emailed one with a timestamp. Diane printed it, and we clipped it behind the PDF like a spine. On Saturday night, I assembled my materials like a woman preparing to be believed. The PDF, the insurance update, the bank note, the Autopay emails, the witness statements, screenshots of texts where Lauren called me confused and combative, and the velvet pouch, because sometimes a small object tells the truth better than a speech. Sunday after service, the community room smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. Folding chairs scraped the floor. Every sound felt sharp, because I was listening for the moment everything would change. Michael arrived first, hands in his pockets, eyes darting like he hoped this would dissolve before it began. Lauren followed, perfectly dressed, smiling at everyone like she owned the room. When she saw Diane, her smile tightened the way a mask does when it senses danger. I stood at the front with my folder and my yellow pad. I'm going to keep this simple, I said. Lauren laughed lightly. Margaret, are we really doing this here? Yes, I said. The quiet that followed felt like a door locking. I held up the printed PDF. This document requests that I be removed as the primary resident of my own home, I said calmly. It claims I'm no longer able to manage independent living. Michael's face paled as he recognized the format. Official. Real. Not something Lauren could wave away with tone. Lauren started to speak. That's not. I raised my hand. You'll speak after I finish. Diane stepped forward. This was submitted by Lauren Ellison as an authorized family representative, she said clearly. Margaret Ellison did not authorize that representation. Carla inhaled sharply. Denise whispered, "Oh my God." Michael stared at Lauren like he was seeing her for the first time without her voice in his ear. Lauren's eyes sharpened, but her tone stayed sweet. "We were trying to help. Margaret has been struggling." I slid the bank document onto the table. "Here's the spending limit change," I said. "Requested by an authorized user. I did not request it." I slid the insurance update. "Here's the policy update requested by Lauren Ellison," I said. I slid the Autopay confirmation emails. "Here are the changes to my accounts," I said. Contact information switched to Lauren's email. Then I placed Carla and Denise's witness statements. "These are written accounts of what was said publicly about putting me on a budget," I said, so the room could get trained to see me as less. Each page landed with a soft slap. Each slap felt like a heartbeat returning. Lauren's sweetness cracked. "So what?" she snapped. "You want a medal for paying bills? We've been carrying you." The room froze at the word carrying because everyone heard what it implied, that I was a burden they deserved to profit from. I looked at my son. "Did you know she filed this to remove me?" I asked. Michael opened his mouth, closed it. His voice came out rough. "No." That was the moment his loyalty shifted from habit to conscience. His eyes filled, not tears yet, but regret. Lauren turned toward him fast. "Michael, don't let them manipulate you." And Michael did something I hadn't seen him do in years. "Lauren," he said, voice shaking, "stop." Silence fell so hard I could hear the air conditioner kick on. I held up my phone and showed screenshots of Lauren's texts. "She's combative. She doesn't remember what she spends. We need her on allowance." I didn't gloat. I didn't explain. I let her words exist in the air. Undeniable. Then I placed the velvet pouch on the table. "This was taken from my dresser," I said softly. "It was found filed in Lauren's binder." Lauren scoffed, but her hands trembled. Denise's voice was quiet, steady. "Lauren," she said, "that's not help. That's theft." Pastor Glenn spoke, calm and firm. "Lauren, is there any explanation that matches these documents?" Lauren tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. She's old. She's paranoid." I cut in, still calm. "My age is not evidence." Then I slid one final paper forward, a written notice ending the month-to-month occupancy agreement. A move-out deadline, properly drafted, properly delivered. "I'm not arguing," I said. "I'm informing." Michael stared at the notice like it was a weapon, and in a way, it was. It was paper that couldn't be gaslit. Lauren's voice went thin. "You can't do that." I met her gaze, unshaking. I already did. Carla began to cry quietly. Denise shook her head in disbelief. Pastor Glenn looked at Michael with a disappointment that was gentle and devastating. And Michael stood up, turned to Lauren and said, "We're leaving, now." Lauren's eyes flashed. "You're choosing her over your wife?" Michael's voice cracked. "I'm choosing truth." Lauren snatched her purse so hard the strap creaked. "This isn't over," she hissed. Then she stormed out, heels striking the floor like punctuation. I watched her go and felt something I didn't expect. Not triumph, relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally remembered how to inhale. Michael lingered, shoulders bowed. "Mom," he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't rush to comfort him. Comfort without accountability is just another way women carry men. "You didn't want to know," I said softly. He flinched, and the flinch told me he understood. As people filed out, my phone buzzed. A credit monitoring alert. New credit inquiry detected. That was the final thread, and when I pulled it, the whole sweater unraveled. Diane helped me request details. The inquiry traced back to a home equity application started in my name. Not completed, because my signature was missing, but started, which meant someone had tried. I filed a report. I froze my credit. I changed passwords and security questions and contacts. I documented everything with dates, confirmations, and copies, because legal protection is not revenge, it's self-respect and paperwork. Lauren didn't apologize. People like her rarely do in a way that matters. She sent texts instead, sharp, blaming messages about how I was destroying the family. I didn't reply. Silence is a boundary when words are only fuel. The move-out deadline stood because it wasn't emotional, it was contractual. On the final day, I watched a moving truck swallow their boxes under a Florida sun that didn't pity anyone. Ava hugged me around the waist and whispered, "I'm sorry, Grandma." I kissed her hair. "You don't have to be sorry for grown folks," I told her. "You just keep being kind." Then they were gone. The social consequences came quietly but fast. At church, women who once laughed politely hugged me like they'd been waiting for permission to admit what they'd seen. Pastor Glenn spoke to Michael privately about accountability. Michael listened with the face of a man finally growing up. Lauren stopped showing up, and the absence of her performance made the room feel like it could breathe again. Public vindication isn't always applause. Sometimes it's the simple shift of people no longer doubting your sanity. The first night they were gone, I walked through my house slowly, touching the counter, the doorway, the walls, like I was learning them again. I put the brass spare key back on a hook by the door, my hook installed with my own hands. I set my chipped mug on the counter and didn't hide it because I was done hiding anything that proved I survived. Then I opened my own new folder, blue, yes, because I wanted that symbol back, and I filed my documents inside, organized and protected. For the first time in months, the air conditioner hum sounded normal, not like a warning. Michael came by a week later alone, shoulders tense, eyes red. "I started counseling," he said. I didn't know how much I was letting her control everything. I believed he meant it. But belief isn't a blank check. "I love you," I told him, because motherhood doesn't vanish when someone disappoints you. But love doesn't mean access. We talked for hours about the moments he ignored, the way Lauren spoke over me, the way she turned concern into authority, the way she used the word old like a verdict. Michael cried once, quietly, and I didn't shame him for it. Shame is where bad cycles breed. "You can be a good man," I said, "but you have to choose it even when it costs you comfort." Reconciliation for us wasn't a hug and a neat ending. It was boundaries written clearly. He would visit with notice, not whenever. Finances would never be discussed without my invitation. No more help that required access. No more protection that felt like restraint. He agreed, not happily, but sincerely. And sincerity is the only place rebuilding can start. Lauren remained out of my life, and that wasn't cruelty. It was hygiene. Here's what I learned, and I'm going to say it plainly. When someone treats you like a child, they're not trying to protect you. They're trying to manage you. Control rarely arrives with chains. It arrives with Autopay, with spreadsheets, with jokes at your expense that train the room to see you as less. If you feel yourself shrinking, pay attention to that feeling. It's your dignity signaling danger. And if you can, document. Because memory can be dismissed, but paper has a stubborn way of staying true. I didn't win by becoming cruel. I won by becoming clear. I stopped asking permission to be respected. I stopped confusing family with entitlement. I used the tools adults are allowed to use: contracts, documentation, witnesses, and the courage to say, "This ends now." Sometimes I still drink coffee from that chipped mug, and my thumb finds the crack without thinking. It reminds me that being cracked doesn't mean being broken. It means you've been through pressure and stayed intact enough to hold warmth. The brass key stays on its hook, right where it belongs, because home is not a place you earn back. It's a place you protect. And if anyone listening is being put on autopay like a child, if someone is using your accounts, your paperwork, your life as if you're already gone, I want you to hear me. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to put your dignity in writing. You don't need to explode to be powerful. You just need to be undeniable. If you were in my shoes, your own family trying to manage you out of your own home, what would you do first? Confront them, document quietly, or get legal advice immediately? Tell me in the comments.